The Living History Project seeks to demonstrate and celebrate the diversity of Cafh, including the diversity of languages, ages, geographies, ethnicities, genders, and lifestyles, as well as the diversity of the tools we may use to work within ourselves, and in the manner in which we experience freely and without dogmas, spirituality itself. History is not just the record of great biographies. It is also built from small personal stories, everyday experiences. Cafh contains all of our experiences. Today's stories show us how, depending on the task we undertake, the geographical location, or the moment in which we find ourselves, we can always live our ideal of expansion of consciousness, freedom, and inner unfolding through innumerable small daily acts with which we respond to important responsibilities in daily life. Through a series of monthly interviews, Caph's Living History records and shares Cafh members' experiences in relation to their inner search, the meaning of their lives, and the expansion of their way of understanding and carrying out in their relationships and in the world, actions that contribute to the good of all beings. Cafh is a path of spiritual unfolding, of the expansion of love and consciousness, and the cultivation of inner freedom. It began its activities in 1937 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and is currently present in many countries. Before we start the interview, we would like to share some recommendations. To begin, we suggest to mute all microphones present in Zoom. At the end of the interview, we will turn on the microphones to greet one another. We also ask that you send your comments, questions, and greetings through the Zoom and YouTube chats. At the end, we will share your questions with the interviewees. We will also post an evaluation form related to the interview in the Zoom chat. Your feedback will help us learn and improve our work. And at the end, you will receive a link to a special photo of this event. That said, it is with great joy that we invite you to enjoy this interview.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Living History of Cafh interview. My name is Don Witcher. I live in the state of Vermont in the United States. I have been a Cafh member for 43 years. Today, we are going to be in conversation with Roberto Mendez from New York City. Roberto was born in Cuba and was educated there and in Puerto Rico for many years. He joined the spiritual path in Cafh in 1977 and was ordained in the path in 2012. Throughout the years, he has been involved in facilitating many Cafh activities, including leading weekly Cafh groups, book clubs, and film series, dialogues, and retreats. During the working day, Roberto is a high school history teacher, a profession he loves. His other interests are many and varied, including literature, cinema, history and current events, nature, backpacking and botany, and last but not least, baseball. I first met Roberto 20 years ago where he was leading a summer Cafh retreat in Wildemar. We immediately found we had something in common. We both taught history in urban high school settings. And I was immediately struck by Roberto's openness, his lack of judgment, and his non-judgmental view of other souls. Roberto reminded me of what my mentor when I first joined, Sergio Farber, told me. He said, "You don't have to believe in anything. All we ask is you have an open mind." Today, we hope to learn a little more of Roberto's literary and spiritual influences, how he found Cafh, his thoughts on Cafh today, and the importance of the nature of his life. Roberto, welcome and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Don, for sharing the interview with me, and thank you for those of you who are here. Can I say a word before you start with the questions?
Yes.
Yeah, you might wonder, since given the biographical information that was given, why I am speaking in English, given the fact that Spanish is my native language and is my best language in a sense. But the problem is that Spanish is not my spiritual language. So I made it since I been in Cafh. I learned the meditation, the discursive meditation, the affective meditation. I always meditated in English, and unless there's a situation where there are Spanish-speaking people who don't speak English, I usually, when I have to talk about spiritual matters and Cafh and activities, I always prefer to use English. For a reason, I find that English is like there are certain words that are spiritual words, let's say, that are very difficult for me to say in Spanish, to really feel it. And English is like, it purifies my mind, my language. Certain things that erase a lot of antagonisms and prejudices I have when I say words in Spanish. So it's being a wonderful purifying. Okay, I'm not saying that English is better than Spanish or vice versa. I'm simply explaining why I'm doing this in English.
Thank you. Roberto, could you tell us what brought you to Cafh and what it was about Cafh that drew you to it?
Well, that's a long question. I mean, I could mention how I found Cafh in New York City in the 1970s, 75, 76. But I think that happens to everyone that enter Cafh. It goes way back in terms of there's something that guides us without being conscious to Cafh. I recall experience I had when I was maybe 17, 18 years old in Puerto Rico, in San Juan. I remember it was an early evening in November, and I was walking, going home, and I had a feeling suddenly that I always was really interested in the idea of grace, because I was raised as a Catholic, and I took the Catholic spirituality, religion, very seriously. I always was very concerned about grace. What was grace? Whether I was living in grace or not. And I had something idea that something happens to me that suddenly I was very happy, and I thought this is grace. And something the most important was that I told myself that my life is going to be fine. You're going to be fine. So don't worry, don't fear. And that was really like a spiritual awakening. That was every time that I remember that experience, really makes me feel the same sense of happiness I had at that time. So that could be, so what happened was, I'm going to be more detailed, that I went to university in Puerto Rico, and at that time the university was a great place. I was in a course about great books, and really slowly my Catholicism really sort of dissolved. And I didn't become an atheist. I simply found that there were other ways to connect with the important questions about life. Certain books really awakened me to those things. So at the same time, when I was in school, I became very politically involved, very radicalized with the left. I was very much involved in Puerto Rican independence movement. I was also involved with a couple of communist organizations. And then when I came to New York to finish undergraduate to graduate school, and working. So I continue. I came to New York at a time of great ferment. The 1970s were really wonderful time in the sense of tremendous sense of freedom, sense of exploration. And so that time I was involved still in the anti-war movement, the war in Vietnam, and the movement for racial justice and many other movements. But I thought that there was something missing. That okay, I was really I would say I was socially, politically very committed, but there was something else that was missing in these commitments. And I was searching spiritually. And at that time, New York was like a supermarket of spiritual offerings, spiritual ideas. I went through different places. I remember there was a place in the East Village in New York that offered meditation. It was some kind of Indian guru. And I remember I went to the place and I said, I want to learn how to meditate. Because I want to have different meaning in my life. And the guy told me, well, sit down there and meditate. But says, I don't know how to meditate. He says, no, simply sit there and meditate. And I remember I sat there for 2 hours and he didn't say anything. And I was trying to meditate, but nothing would happen. I was totally distracted with all the... So finally I left and nothing happened. I was taking yoga classes at Stuyvesant High School in New York. And the teacher one day told the class that check an announcement that I posted by the volunteer board. I met this wonderful individual that is offering a workshop on meditations at NYU and has a phone number there. So that was it. That was, I called this individual and immediately I make an appointment. I was interviewed. I met a couple of members of Cafh. And then I began a series of workshops for 7 weeks at NYU, the law school. And I knew right away this was really for me. It was a wonderful experience, except that when it came to the 7th day, everything was going very well until the 7th day, the 7th week, I mean. And there was one word that really sort of shattered my comfort, and that was the word renouncement. And when the word was renouncement, I said, well, this smells like Catholicism again. So I think I got myself a mistake in the wrong place. But I was there, I stayed there. And that was the only shock. After that, I was really, really inspired by the people I met there. It's like there's a film or book by Gurdjieff, Meeting with Remarkable Men. And it really was meeting with remarkable men and women at that time. And maybe I'll mention some of those names later, but that was my beginning with Cafh. That's the actual start in the path. So I became, the only thing something that bothered me a little bit is that I felt that I was rushed in Cafh. I spent 1 year as a patronized, a sponsor, and 1 year as I think half a semester as a page, and 1 year as choir. And then I became have to make the vows of solitary night, and I felt that I was really rushed. I wasn't prepared for it, but I survived. I found that the vow of obedience was very scary. And the idea was that, well, one of these days, somebody's going to come here and it's going to tell me that you have to go to Timbuktu to open a table. But that never happened. Throughout the years, I was expecting for somebody to tell me that you have to go to this place or do something that you don't want to do, but never happens. And that was it.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. Thank you. You also named a few people when we talked last who had a very strong impact on your life. Jorge Waxenberg, the second spiritual director of Cafh, Santiago Barbui, and Thomas Agustin. Could you elaborate a little about your experiences with them and the importance of them in your life?
Yeah, let me start with the most immediate one, which is Tomás. Tomás was my first orator, and he wasn't a superior delegate, but he was my first orator. And Tomás was an example of, for me, Cafh is not only ideas, but not only like open mind, as you said, but it's something more than the open mind about Cafh. It's just how you live your life. And the verticality of Tomás, his integrity and his love, not only for the sons and daughters of Cafh, but also he was a psychiatrist He had a very extensive practice in the Bronx, in the hospitals, and he's a man that I don't know if he had any time to sleep, but he really gave himself completely to everyone. And for me, he was always saying, and he's an example of life. Every time that I complain because I have I'm overwhelmed with work, I have too many obligations and duties, all I have to do is to talk, to think of Thomas, to see his face, and that solved everything. Just like if he was like an example, like an imitation. It's like almost like an imitation of Thomas. I know that it's not good to imitate anyone, but he was my inspiration in a sense. So that was the first one. The same, Senor Jorge. One when we have a visit, we were told that the Grandmaster Knight was visiting us. And I didn't know who, I didn't see any pictures of Jorge Waxenberg at all. I was expecting this imposing individual, about 6'5" feet tall, like really, and I saw this man who was like so gentle and so humble and so kind and so wonderful, and that really like was like a great experience. And for some reason, every time that I talk to Senor Jorge, I would say thank you for all you have given me. But every time he saw me and he saw other people, he would say thank you to us, to me. So I didn't know he was telling me thank you. It was simply something that. But what I love about him was his humility. And I remember an anecdote. So when we had the center in New York, a couple of years after the center was inaugurated, I was going to an activity, and before going to the reunions, I used to go to a restaurant, where it's now a McDonald's. It used to be an Israeli place where they used to have Middle Eastern food. And there I walked there, I saw Senor Jorge eating a hamburger. So like anybody else. So it was really, and then he invited me to sit with him and we have a conversation. The conversation was nothing about spiritual matters, it was a spiritual conversation because of the love that was transpiring, and he was listening to me and I was listening to him, but we were talking about, I don't know, about the weather, about anything. So, but always he was my inspiration in that respect. And I never forget the last time I saw him. It was at Tivoli at the end of the retreat. I was the last person left, and I was going to get my car to leave the retreat, and then he was there and he said goodbye, and that's the image I have of him before. And the third one was maybe Santiago Barbui, he left Cafh eventually, I think, but he was, I think, the delegate in Peru. In fact, the University of San Marcos has a faculty that is named after him. And it was 1976, 1977, I was new in Cafh, and there was an assembly in Brooklyn at that time. That's the 98 live in Brooklyn, and that's where the assembly was. And my superior, my 98, asked me to meet this fellow that I'm sure you're going to like, because he's a lot like you, he told me. And then I met Barui, and I would say he's very, what I love about him was he was kind of eccentric, or he was eccentric, but he's open-minded and he's so original and so open to life and things. And I was his driver for 2 or 3 days. I have a small Beetle Volkswagen, and we went to the Whitney Museum and we went to many places. And I have two anecdotes that I still remember vividly, because I was always talking about the idea of perfection, wanting to be perfect, a spiritual perfect, morally perfect. And Barbui was a chain smoker. He smoked like crazy. And in addition, he was always drinking the yerba mate. But I was driving over the bridge and I said to him, Senor Barbui, how come you have this vow of renunciation and you are a chain smoker? Can you renounce to your smoking? Says, listen, son, in life, one should keep 1 or 2 imperfections. Okay, so don't try to be perfect. Okay, this is my imperfection, smoking, and I mean, So learn that lesson in life. Keep always one imperfection that will keep you human. Don't try to be a god. Don't try to be something else than you are. And also, he gave me something that's very relevant for today in Cafh. I took him to the Rudolf Steiner School in the East Side. And then I picked him up after 3 or 4 hours. I asked him, how was it? He says, well, this is an experience that a Cafh may have to learn in this country. I was there, and there were a group of German people, just dancing around in a circle. But no one else can enter that circle. They are German, they speak German, and they are very satisfied with the teachings of Steiner and all of that. And I say, make sure that doesn't happen to Cafh, that becomes like a circle of Spanish-speaking people that other people cannot enter in. And that was a very interesting thing to do, not in the sense that to make sure that Cafh doesn't become exclusive to a particular group of something like that. So those are the 3 persons that I really remember vividly from Cafh. There are many others, and these are men. There are others also women that were very, very important, especially like Barbara and Judy, that were really very important. Isabel, Heredia, that really were very influential to me and really taught me a lot. Especially Isabel, who's a wonderful individual, a very wonderful soul, very generous, and from her I learned kindness. And Elena Muro was another one. I don't know if anybody remembers these souls, but they were really wonderful.
Thank you, Roberto, for these wonderful anecdotes and descriptions. They're really, really beautiful. So let's go to the next question. In our conversations, you've also mentioned before several authors and thinkers who were great influences in your life, such as Walt Whitman, Thoreau, Goethe, and Simone Weil. Do you return to any of these authors, and how was it they shaped your life and thinking, and perhaps even your spiritual life?
Yeah, I'll speak only about Simone Weil because she's really important to me, and I always go back to her writings. But before I talk to Simone Weil, an influence that is not a writer, is not in Cafh, for me, really important in my life was Dorothy Day. Because before I entered Cafh, when I was in New York, I lived in the same block of the St. Joseph House of the Catholic Worker, and Dorothy lived there. And I met Dorothy a few times. I had a few conversations with her. And in one of the conversations we had, she told me, well, I think that given the way you are and you think, I recommend that you should read Simone Weil. One of the things I learned about Dorothy Day was the importance of finding time for meditation and for silence. I remember one occasion I went to St. Joseph House because I wanted to speak with Dorothy. I really turned her into a kind of a spiritual director without her knowing. And I was told, you can't, because Dorothy is in retreat. She's in meditation. And for me, that was never heard that a person in retreat in meditation. And I was a little bit offended. I felt that she had to be open to me and to everybody all the time. And then she explained to me what was so important for her to meditate and to have to do this practice of taking a number of days of retreat and stay there in silence, in prayer all the time. So she's the one who took me to Simone Weil. And the thing that really influenced me about Simone Weil is the idea of attention. She wrote a wonderful essay about the importance of school studies as a means to learn how to pray. She said that when you really, really pay attention, you're praying. The idea of the essay is that you train children, for example, to solve problems in geometry, to solve problems, theorems, and that requires concentration, not only attention, but concentration. And that kind of concentration and attention then can be translated into prayer. But in addition to that, she said, it's a comment that she made, is that the most difficult thing for a human being is to pay attention and to concentrate, and especially to pay attention to other souls, to other people. And the act of listening deeply to somebody else, and the act of listening and having empathy and compassion for that person, that's prayer. So for me, that's really the most valuable. There are other things about, she's controversial. She's said some things that are, for some people, even offensive or paradoxical, but this is to me the germ, the important thing about her. I mean, she used to go through long fast, and she spent time working in factories in southern France, and she starved herself to death in solidarity with the French, with Free France, all that. But to me, the important thing is this idea of attention, that it's been always very important in my life. Doesn't mean that I try. To me, attention is the most important quality that I want to cultivate, and I agree that attention is prayer. I don't say that I do that. I mean, I try to do it. It's all trying. For me, it's always this idea of always trying to be attentive is the most important thing in my life, because that agrees with the ideas of Cafh, to be present and to participate. Those two ideas of presence and participation are really contained in that idea of attention, being attentive. And that's the most important thing about Simone Weil that really contributed to my life.
Roberto, would you take a moment and expand on the idea of prayer and describe to us what prayer is to you?
Well, I have to say, there's no prayer. I would say a prayer, but prayers. Maybe there are two ways for me to in terms of my experience with prayer in daily life. Number one is the conventional way to pray for mostly prayers of intercession, to pray for souls, for people, and I practice praying I have almost like a software that I sit to pray, and then I see, it's like now with the little boxes in Zoom, it's a little bit like Zoom, let's say it's like a software. So I can see the people and pray for them. One of the things I do that I think Dora is here, and I don't know if she remembers that, probably she doesn't, but that I never pray for myself. I pray for other people. And also, I never pray for anything in particular. For example, I have a student of mine that recently asked me to pray for so he could get into Cornell University, which is one of the Ivy League schools in the top schools in the United States. So I told him, listen, I'm going to pray for you, but I'm not going to pray for that you get into Cornell University. That's not the way I pray. The way I pray is I pray for the best for you. So I don't know what the best for you is. I don't know what the best for me is. And that's the way I pray. I simply pray for the best. That's it. But I'm not, for me, prayer is not transactional. I'm not going to ask the divine or that you give me this and I'll give you that. That's not my kind of prayer. But that's the conventional way of prayer. The second way of prayer, perhaps, is also a little bit like, and I think that relates to the method, and that relates to something in one of the nights, the groups of nights that with on Mondays, I remember there was a video with Thich Nhat Hanh, and he said something. Somebody asked him, when do you meditate? And he said, I meditate all the time. And I think that maybe that's the idea. It's not I meditate all the time, but to me, the idea of the method that you follow the day is that whatever you do during the day is important, and you give your attention to that. So any act that I perform with intention of being attentive, of love, to me, that's prayer. Sometimes I'm very attentive, most of the times I'm not, but I think the idea is trying. And I think that trying what does is that, to me in particular, it creates a kind of vibration in the mind. Years ago, in a very naive way, I thought that I was wasting my days because I would go to school to work, and I wasn't praying because I was simply working. I have to work, I have to speak, I have to teach lessons, I have to deal with individuals, with colleagues. And I didn't realize that the fact that I was doing that with attention, with love, that was prayer. I thought that I had created some kind of idea of someone like Krishnamurti that was like doing things, and it's kind of a spiritual multitasking, that you are like doing your external activities, and at the same time you are totally concentrated in silence. But I realized then that just the idea of being attentive and being present, and also the idea of trying all the time to maintain that attention, to me, is kind of prayer. It's a state of meditation. And I think in terms of the method of Cafh, that is the idea of hallowing the day, to try to bring that attention and that state of meditation, of prayer, to everything. And what has helped me the most has been the retreats. The notion of retreat, to me, is a retreat is a template of how I want to live my days. And I usually don't talk about a spiritual life. I talk about spiritual days and spiritual hours. The spiritual life is instruction, it's something that too big. But these are more concrete, immediate things. So the retreat taught me to this idea that I can do everything. I can wake up in the morning, I can eat breakfast, prepare breakfast, meditate, do manual work, do intellectual work, study, everything else, even having a nap during the day, which I don't have, but that I can do it in a meditative state. And the idea of the bell, that is a separation between all these different activities. So that gap to me was or is very important in my life, because I try to inwardly to live my day according, like if there were bell ringing and there's a gap there. So, and I already have some, sometimes it becomes very mechanical, but let's say I enter work, I go up the stairs, and then I open the day of work, and then I subdivide the day of work in terms of different activities I do. And each one, I open it and I close it. I open it and I close it. And I try to do that way. The problem with that is sometimes it becomes mechanical. And I just doing just out of habit. But even if I do it mechanical, I think has always has to me like some benefits, some fruit. So that's the way. And that's the way the retreat is. Except in the retreat, I have that time. I don't have that tension about doing other things. So, but that's the way I try to live the day. And the retreat really taught me how to do that. And the days when I don't work, they're easy because I structure my day. And I have a room for every activity, time for every activity. I open it, I close it, I open it, I close it. And that gives me also the, another habit is the examinations, the retrospective examinations, like leaving work and closing the day, and having a retrospective examination of the day, and go to something else. I go to the gym, I go to take the subway, read a book, whatever. But I'm closing that long day from 7:30 to 5 o'clock. I close it, and something else, and I try to live it with attention, the same way that I was doing in school. So that's the idea of prayer to me. That I don't know, it makes sense, but maybe I'm talking too much, but.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's wonderful. It's very good. You've been in Cafh almost 50 years now, so it's obviously a big part of your life.
Yeah.
But how do you see the future of Cafh in the United States today?
This is one of my main worries. There's nothing I can do about it, in the sense that in one way, I think it could be, in terms of ideas of Cafh, it could be very bright, because given this wonderful thing that we have now with the Zoom and the internet, and we have the, I don't know, I'm speaking to people who are not from the United States, but we have that Cafh Global. I know that that exists in other places, but and I understand that there are many people are connecting with reading these articles, and they're connecting to the ideas of Cafh, and the evidence is that they receive a lot of feedback, a lot of comments about it. So I think that extending the ideas of Cafh is wonderful. In that sense, the Cafh can have a bright future. But the problem is that in order to articulate and to make that bright future concrete, you need people. And there comes the problem of biology. In general, Cafh in the United States, I believe, and Canada, is old. So, so what's going to happen in 20 years? Many of us won't be around in 20 years, or most of us. So, so what's going to happen to Cafh? That's the main problem, that we don't have. And with that is associated another thing, that there are two things: how to speak to, how to make sure that if something happens with Cafh in United States and Canada, and maybe happens in other places, Europe, Australia, other places, that Cafh doesn't work like it works in Spanish-speaking, Portuguese-speaking countries. And I don't know, we have to find a medium, some way, try to bring Cafh to American culture, which is very different from the culture in Brazil and that's the Spanish-speaking countries in South America, being a country that is very is a Protestant country, although is different, very individualistic and other things. So, and the other thing is also the question of generation. I find that with the young people, to me, it's like speaking with people from Mars. They're very different. They use languages, and their framework and their context is totally alien to me. And sometimes I feel really stupid because I don't know what they're saying to me. And we have learned, we have to find, I don't know if we old people can do that, or middle-aged people can do that, but I have to be a way also to be able to speak with these people. The young people, the so-called millennials and Generation Z. I hate all these new divisions that they have created now. With all the divisions we have now, they have created divisions in generations. So.
Very good. Roberto, in the spring of 2023 in New York here, we had a group of about 10 sons and daughters from Cafh meet once a month for 5 months, discussing what is the essence of Cafh. You've talked about several different ideas that are really important to you about Cafh, or summarize Cafh. Can you tell us what some of the ideas that were shared at those meetings, and again, what would you say is the very essence of Cafh for you?
Well, the first thing I want to say, I hope this continues, because it's really nice. I've been expecting all this time an invitation to join that essence of Cafh again. So I really, because I found it very fruitful and very good. So, I would say, I think the word that would describe in terms of most of the people there, this is one word that would describe that experience with the connection. That the idea of a spiritual life is to make connections with oneself, connections with what is deepest and divine in ourselves, and to make connections with souls, with other people. And also the idea of beginning by making connections with the people in our groups, in our tables in New York. So I would say that was the main idea. And also that connections relate also to relationships. So to make sure that our relationship with any people is basically connecting with people, with others. The idea of love and compassion towards others, and how the way we relate in the reunions, the way we relate as friends in Cafh, and the way we relate to people outside of Cafh. And I think there were some wonderful contributions. Like, for example, I noticed that In the summer, there were some attempts to people to be together. We have a picnic in Central Park. I think they're planning a hike now in November in Central Park again. So there meet people coming together and talking and speaking. So that idea of connection, I think that was the main idea. That was the essence of Cafh, that particular essence. Of course, that doesn't deny that other important things in Cafh, like some ideas of renouncement, the idea of the ceremonial, and all of that were also important. But basically, the idea of connection, to be able, and that's something I see in the group of nights to which you belong. I know Steve is here, so probably they can speak about it, that most of the meditations and the teachings in that group, which is a wonderful group, are related to connection. All the meditations are based about this idea of connection. So, I mean, you can talk, you were in the group, so you were the one who really started. In fact, he came from California to New York and don't really transform, at least on the side of the nights, really New York, our reunions on Mondays. So, and I remember that there was a comment in the penultimate reunion that there was a kind of evaluation of the reunion and says, well, we have evolved from being a very theoretical group talking about ideas, and now we're really talking about what really matters, talking about life, talking about how we live and how we connect with others, how we love, how we empathize, and all of that. So in a way, I think that we really owe you a lot, Don, in that sense.
Very good, thank you. You know, I had a question on the method. You mentioned that. You mentioned that actually the method opens with the words "hallow the day." But the question that we had was, and you may have answered, I think you have answered it partly, is how has this method, which is kind of the fundamental structure of Cafh, how has the method helped you in all these years that you have worked with young people? And if you could expand on that any more, I'd appreciate it. If not, I don't want to be redundant either.
I don't say about young people. I don't know how the method has influenced me about young people, but in general, I always found, and maybe I'm wrong, but that the good thing about the method is that it's a question of your attitude, your intention about life. You are bringing certain attitude and spirit. In other groups, in other paths, for example, when it comes, let's say, to eating, okay, food. So it's prescribed that you have to be a vegetarian, or you have to be, or you cannot be a meat eater, or it tells you exactly what you have to do, and very specifically, very concrete. And the good thing about the method of Cafh is that you don't have to do anything special. And that's a wonderful thing about the method of Cafh. You can live your life, you can have your job, you can have your family, you can commute every day, you can do that. Without missing a bit, you simply is that you bring that spirit of attention, that spirit of love, that spirit of prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it, to everything you do. And so that translates in the family. You look at the method, you have the family, you have work, you have eating, you have everything there. So everything is prescribed. Not prescribed, prescribed. There, it's there. But it doesn't anything that puts you in a jail, in a cage, that you have to do certain things. If you don't do it, you're wrong. So that's the wonderful thing about the method, that leave you give you freedom to live your life the way it is, but with an intention of love, of renouncement, all of that. Doesn't tell you that okay, don't eat meat, don't do that.
Thank you. The word spirituality is used in Cafh in part to describe human beings' quest to live with inner freedom. How would you define spirituality as it applies to your own life experiences?
I don't like that term a lot, and I don't like terms. I don't like really like I used to live. Somebody asked me if I'm a spiritual or not. I don't know what that means, if I'm a spiritual or live a spiritual life, because I don't know the I never liked the term very much. I want kind of like a little bit of kitsch in the, it's kind of sentimentality and like many religious terms that are used, I find it useless. And to me, but it's useful to people to have something to hold on. So, but I really don't need it. I think it's just to live with a spirit, with attention, with a spirit of love and opening. That's what I would say spirituality would be to me. That I have a problem with the words. Like some people are very finicky about certain meals, certain food. I have a problem with certain words that maybe from my childhood experience, I have always like horrors of sentimentality and feelings and stuff like that, and many things I inherited from Catholicism that I'm still trying to defecate. To speak. So maybe that's what prevents me sometimes when words can be very dangerous to me. Sometimes they really create certain kind of barriers. Yeah, I have to go over them.
Okay, very good. Roberto, the title of this talk is called Finding Simplicity in the Curious Complexity of Life. That's the title that has been given to this interview. What do you have to say about that and your own life?
Well, life is complicated, especially nowadays. The thing is that you're not going to change that. That's the commuting and the work culture that exists in this country and in other countries and obligations. And that's not, I don't say even, I don't really complex, it's more complicated. But one always can build a way to live with certain kind of simplicity and I would say basically we have in the meditation on the two roads, attachment and disattachment, to see how you live, not only materially but also spiritually. I would say that I don't know, there's certain, find what you need to live and to love and to support the people who you love, and you don't have to succumb to the rush of life. One of the things it's a mantra I have that is from, I think, from the Latin church. It's called Festina Lente, means to hasten slowly. And that's one of the things to me that helps a lot to be simple, in the sense not to rush, not to hurry, just to do certain, whenever I feel like rushing, I say to myself, slow down. There's nothing to rush about. Of course, there might be some situations where you have to rush, but the idea of slowing down is very important. I learned a lot from Dorothy Day, the Catholic worker, because their idea was voluntary poverty. Voluntary poverty is an oxymoron, because poverty is never voluntary. But as a way of living with simplicity, I think it's a useful idea, and that's something that I learned from my experience with Catholic worker. I took it to an extreme, and Cafh cured me from that. When I entered Cafh, for example, I didn't sleep on a bed. I had no telephone. I was taught by my spiritual director at that time to live like a normal human being. That's what's going to happen if you have an aspirant, people want to come to your house, friends, and they want to know where they're going to. You don't have a chair, so you sit on the floor. Like if you were in Japan, where are you going to put these people? They're going to think that Cafh is like a nut house. It's going to be a sect of ascetic people, like the fathers of the desert. So he taught me. I got a telephone. I got a bed. I got a watch. I never wore a watch. So all those things. I bought a radio. I never bought a television. I never watched television in my life.
Congratulations. Where do you encounter sacred moments of awe and wonder in daily life?
My kitchen. all I have to do is to go to the kitchen and really prepare a meal, or cut the bread in the morning, or prepare breakfast. So that, and right now I'm here in front, there's this is not the greatest tree in the world, but the London plains that it's super abundant in New York. But here I can see the boughs and the branches and the twigs, and still hasn't lost the leaves. And just looking at looking at that, this is a moment of, I wouldn't call sacredness. It's just a moment of connection with that, maybe sacred, but when I say the meditation, that in the mornings, the silence that envelops me, which is not only the silence, is that I take all the sound of the clock, the sound of the cars driving outside, all of that's part of silence, and those are really moments of really elevation.
Besides silence, you meditate every day. So is anything else you take from the meditation during your daily life, or is once the meditation's over and the silence is gone, are you back into the world?
Well, I'm back into the world, but what I do is, like, if I do the effective meditation, the meditation had a purpose. So I try to, the purpose is not simply just like words I enunciate when I'm meditating. The purpose is something that I'm going to do, and that I want to do, I need to do. So I try to do it, and it's a way to remind myself during the day. So, well, that was the purpose you have in the morning. So are you doing this? So that's useful. Or use the picture. Those two things, the picture and the purpose, but that's very useful. And if I'm doing another kind of meditation, so it's different, but it's always, I said before, a vibration remains in you. You meditate, you get that habit to meditate every day for half an hour, and then it's like it creates a vibration that extends throughout the entire day.
You had mentioned once when we talked that you do a lot of backpacking on your vacations, and that's what I was wondering, was the backpacking a form of going back into nature or being surrounded by wonder?
Not anymore. One of the things that I remember when I entered Cafh, they told me that don't go any place, don't go backpack into any place. You have to learn to meditate at home, in the city, in the middle of the city. I remember Tomas told me, what you have to do is your goal should be that you should be able to meditate in the subway. And they told me, don't go now to the countryside to try to be inspired by nature. That's very nice, but that's not what you have to do. And that was a good lesson to do. Yeah, backpacking helped me a lot physically. I don't do it anymore, but for various reasons. But it's when you're backpacking, you have no choices. You start walking. It's not like in the city. Okay, I go to the corner and have so many options. I can go to the restaurant. I can go could go into theater. Could go there. You have no choice. You are in the back, and that's a wonderful experience to see that you have no choice except to be there and if you are not there, then you're going to really to mortify yourself, because you're going to be complaining about the heat, about the cold, about the trail, about the difficulties. But it's a wonderful experience about being there, being centered, being present. So, but I don't think it's necessary for a spiritual life. That's just like a idiosyncrasy that I have, and it was very useful, but it's not for everybody. So
I am backtracking a little bit, but when you talk about New York City and you've lived there a long time, I also think of Walt Whitman, who in the list of people that influenced you, of authors that influenced you, you talked about Walt Whitman, and especially a poem of his that says, I contain multitudes. Can you explain what that means to you, I contain multitudes?
Yeah, in the sense, there are two senses. In the sense that, to me, multitudes are scary. And I'm not talking about confronting a million people like in a concentration, in a political demonstration, but like in New York, you walk into certain places, squares, the subways, and there are scores of people there. I always find the multitudes very scary. And they to me, it's an exercise because I tend to have a hostility towards the multitude. I feel threatened by it, physically, not mentally, but physically. So the idea is that to remember that that multitude is made of people, individuals, souls, and to try to. Whitman wrote a poem about it's called Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. And that's before the subways existed. Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, he was crossing from Manhattan to Brooklyn. And he describes in that poem how he mingles with all these people, all these kinds of people that time. At that time, New York was already very diverse. And so how is the idea that he sees like him embracing everyone. And that poem helps me a lot because that idea, when I see those crowds, just to see that they're not simply a mass that is going to harm me or hurt me, but simply they're people, and they're people going to work, and they're people who are happy, people are unhappy, people of all ages or races, ethnicities, and all of that. So it's very one in that sense. And Whitman has a great sense of openness to everything, which is really, it's very different from Simone Weil, both personally but that idea of democracy that he has, in the sense that embracing all human beings, no matter how different they are. He's the American poet. I don't know if the people in South America are familiar with him, but that's he's the poet of America, I would say, the United States.
Well, we're almost done. I just have one last question. There was a questionnaire sent to you for this interview, and in there you say that if your brain were examined, 80% of it would be baseball. What does baseball mean to you?
I mean, this is probably South Americans, maybe, or Europeans won't understand because they don't. But I grew up in baseball, and I can tell you right now the lineups and the rosters of teams about 50 years ago, both in Cuba, Puerto Rico, here in the United States. And to me, I remember whenever the baseball season ended, which is now ending, to me, I used to call it the dark night of the soul. Be without baseball from November to March to April. And no, it's being always like, to me, there's a lot of poetry and philosophy and life in baseball. I think it's very beautiful. The new generations don't connect with it because it's a very slow sport. And in many other places, they complain that they like high-scoring games, like in the United States, like in basketball and other places. But I think it's a beautiful place, and I grew up on that, and it's part of me. And I honestly, many times I find myself thinking about baseball. Even before that, I was thinking about who was going to win tonight, Houston or Texas.
Roberto, you're wonderful, and I thank you so much for opening your heart and your soul to us today. But that's all the questions I have, and I believe we are due to end in a minute or so. But I thank you so very much, very much.
Thank you to you. Thanks to you, Don, and thanks to everybody who had the patience to hear. It's so funny because you're supposed to forget yourself, and that's the spiritual work. And then in this experience, it's almost like I saturate myself with myself, which is not, I don't know. I feel now totally saturated, like a drunkard.
I'm going to jump in here. This is Lynn from New York. And I apologize, Roberto, for making you saturate yourself with yourself. But I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your thoughts and your experiences. It's been a wonderful interview. And Don, I also want to thank you for being a terrific interviewer. I really appreciate it. We're going to get to a few questions from the audience, but first I want to thank, on behalf of everyone in the living history of Cafh, we want to thank the spiritual director of Cafh, Anna Cristina Flor, for supporting this project. And we want to thank all of the members of Cafh who make it possible through their teamwork and the offering of their energies, time, knowledge, and really a lot of love that goes into this project and brings us here once a month in the afternoons on Sundays. I would like to remind everybody that it is helpful to us if you do get a chance to fill out the evaluation form and give us your comments, and that is in the chat. Now to get to the questions.
There's a question from Adrian and Jeff. Can I answer that question in the chat, or you want to?
Go ahead. What's the question?
How do you participate with baseball?
Yeah.
For many years, baseball was a kind of like a free zone in me, in the sense that when I go to the baseball game, I have the freedom, for some reason, not to see the players as human beings, and that be completely like insult them, not maybe because of my, I'm kind of reserved, but inwardly, and to say horrible things about that. Until one day I realized that really that's the stadium baseball is, these are human beings, and you have to, I mean, it's even when they are not from your team or they make error, you have to treat them with compassion and understanding. And that was a great lesson to me. So that was one way that I participated with baseball, in baseball, spiritual.
Yes, thank you. Good question. Somebody is asking about peace. It's a big topic these past few weeks. What do you think about peace, individual peace? How do you bring that peace out into the world? What is that for you?
I don't know. I remember Monday after the incidents in Gaza, that the first thing a student came to me and asked me, what side should I take? And I said, well, this is not a question of taking sides. You have to look at both sides are suffering, and you have to look at the context and all of that, and try to feel compassion for all. I think that in terms of peace is, I mean, I've seen a lot of people talk about peace, and really they have a different, their actions don't so betray that idea of peace, that the way they bring antagonisms, and they bring so it's just to live your vocation, to live what Cafh talks about, the compassion, love. It's just to listen to people, not to take sides, to try to understanding in conflict, always two sides or more than two sides, and try to understand all of them, and not to join the fray, just simply to not see like Simone Weil, not to take a side, just straight in the crossroads there, just simply pray for people, empathizing with people.
Thank you. Roberto, when we had spoken before, you mentioned that your spirituality is very dry. And does that also have to do with silence or emptiness?
No, it has to do with something. Yeah, that's true that I didn't. My problem with being when I was a Catholic, I was a Protestant, in the sense that I detest intercessors, I detest angels, saints, protectors, anything. My spirituality is a relationship between me and the divine, and also seeing all souls in the divine. But all these other things, that all these other characters that religions like Catholicism, Tibetan Buddhism, and bring, not for me. I can't. And to me, it was always like a sense of me and the divine. And also, I have a problem with feelings. My main failure meditating is that I've meditated for so many years, the affective meditation, I have never felt anything. I go to the sensations, I repeat the words, and I can really assure you that I have never felt anything. So, and you know, I guess that's the way that I don't know. So that's the kind of, that's why my spirituality is right in that sense.
It sounds dry, but very full. I mean, your life is very full.
Yeah, it's you can have a fullness in empty in emptiness. There, like I think it was in the full moon message of the locutions, like the void, the empty. There are two kinds of voids and emptiness. One can be a void and emptiness of indifference, and you can have an emptiness that is full of love and very full. So the idea of solitude, you can have solitude and being connected with everyone, being in solitude, which I love solitude. It's a word that's not used in Cafh, I think. But being solitude doesn't mean to be isolated, insulated, doesn't mean to be alone, lonely. Solitude can contain multitudes. And my experience is that when I'm in solitude, I'm participating with everyone. And when I'm participating with everyone, I'm in solitude.
Yes.
I don't know, it's a paradox. I don't know how to explain it, but that's the way it is.
Roberto, going back, way back at the beginning of this interview, you mentioned grace and that wonderful experience you had when you were young. And that, you know, grace is a Catholic idea, but somebody has asked if you encountered it in Cafh.
I've encountered it in life. And in Cafh, I mean, I don't know about, I know that the word grace appears in Cafh many things. I think it's in the works of Cafh. I don't want any definition of grace. I think it's a feeling that of gratitude that have given, whatever happens to me in life is fine and is like a gift, and that is grace. There's a wonderful novel and film, French film. It's called The Journal of a Country Priest. And when the priest is dying at the end, his last word is, all is grace. He's dying in a horrible condition, but his last words is, everything is grace. And that's really what it is for me. Like, everything is grace. Everything's given me that. The fact that I'm contemplating that London tree now, that to me is grace.
Very nice.
A gift that I receive every day, that when I wake up in the morning, that's grace. So I know in the Catholic, I think in Catholic doctrine it's something that's different, maybe, I don't know, but that's the way I interpret that idea.
Well, it has been a gift to have you here today. I kind of want to leave it on that note. It's a nice note to leave it on. So I want to thank you both, Don and Roberto, once again for participating in this interview and taking this time in your lives to put your energies into this experience. And I would like to thank everybody out there who's attending this interview. Thanks for participating today.